Sometime after midnight on May 26, 2020, a sleek black and white speedboat darted through the sea's waves off the coast of Sweden. The two men on board were barreling toward a set of coordinates in the darkness, armed with navigation equipment, night vision goggles, and fishing rods. The Donousa, a black and red 225-meter-long cargo ship, was sitting motionless in the water around 17 kilometers ahead. On its way from Brazil to Poland, the Donousa had made this unofficial stop in the North Sea so that some corrupt sailors could throw nets holding 400 kilograms of cocaine, a quantity with a street value of about $39 million, into the water. Then the ship would light up the area like a disco in the middle of the sea, a member of the drug gang wrote in a text message. And with that, the speedboat crew would reel in the nets and whisk the drugs to docks on Swedish soil. That was the plan as the courier understood it anyway. Stationed on shore in a white van, his job was to wait for the speedboat to return, then transport its payload to a warehouse, all while fielding minute-by-minute commands from the operation's mastermind and two other higher-ups. In an encrypted group chat, they peppered him with orders in Swedish. Stay calm, avoid looking shady, melt into traffic when the time comes. You'll drive slow as fuck. The four men were all using Skyphones, pricey, customized devices that not only sent encrypted messages like Signal or WhatsApp did, but could also be remotely wiped on demand if they fell into the hands of law enforcement. By 2020, phones made by Sky and a handful of competitors had become a widespread and sophisticated part of the drug traffickers' toolkit. For the truly paranoid, some brands even removed the GPS, camera, and microphone from their devices. But slick technology is no guarantee that things will go smoothly in the wee hours of a nearly $40 million drug deal. When the speedboat finally motored in from the open sea after dawn, its pilot docked in the wrong place at first. Then the packages of cocaine were so big the men had trouble cramming them into the van. At the warehouse, the courier reported via chat that the speedboat pilot was grating on his nerves. The pilot, who barely spoke Swedish, seemed whiny and agitated as they set about verifying that every kilogram of cocaine was accounted for. At his boss's heavy-handed direction, the courier staged a succession of photographs and shared each with the group. Two neat lines of duffel bags coated entirely in duct tape, a bag unzipped to show the black-wrapped blocks inside, neat rows of cocaine bricks against the gray concrete floor. But the tally kept coming up short, about 70 kilograms short to be exact. "Did you have eyes on it the whole time?" the mastermind texted in a staccato series of messages. "How can so much be missing?" Using the courier's Skyphone, the anxious pilot finally divulged the truth. Speaking Croatian with the mastermind, he revealed that some cocaine had been lost at sea. Some of the duffel bags had broken open as they fished the drugs out of the water. Now it was the courier who started to freak out. The tension was ratcheting up so much that he asked the bosses to please stop bombarding them with messages for a minute so they could think clearly. The two men in the warehouse must have realized what a dangerous position they were in, caught literally holding the bags when more than $6 million worth of cocaine had disappeared. The disembodied bosses demanded more photographs. The courier stacked the blocks of cocaine up against a white wall in the warehouse for easier counting, then sent the snapshot. "Are you happy?" he texted. "Closer," one of the higher-ups commanded. "Get down on your knees." More pictures came in quick succession, one showing a red swirl emblem stamped onto each brick of cocaine, one showing the courier's feet standing on a pile of flattened, empty duffel bags. By now it was just before 9 a.m. The bizarre photo shoot had gone on for 2 hours. At some point, the bosses seemed resolved to treat the loss as a cost of doing business. Soon after, members of the public found some bundles of cocaine washed up on shore. The mastermind finally congratulated his team on the haul. "Good job, everyone," he texted in the group chat. And with that, the ordeal was over. No doubt much of the anxiety permeating the chats had been fueled by the notoriously volatile moods of the mastermind himself. His name was Maximilian Rivkin, but he more commonly went by his nickname, Microsoft. A Swedish gangster originally from Serbia, he was a heavy-set 36-year-old man with short dark hair that gripped the top of his egg-shaped head. Some gray had started to appear in his thin beard, which showed the beginnings of a handlebar mustache. On his right forearm, He had a large tattoo of the three wise monkeys from folklore that hear no evil, see no evil, and speak no evil. Microsoft was a true 21st century drug kingpin, technologically savvy, globally connected, and capable of smuggling a variety of illegal narcotics from different parts of the world. Beyond Serbian and Swedish, he planned his crimes in Bosnian, Spanish, English, and Croatian. Microsoft was always online, he later told an associate in an encrypted text message. A workaholic, he sent encrypted messages nearly every moment of his waking life. This speedboat operation was just one in a seemingly unending list of harebrained schemes Microsoft had for trafficking drugs. At various points, he discussed and sometimes succeeded in shipping hash hidden inside furniture, cocaine inside tiles, and more cocaine nestled among shipments of tulips. He told a conspirator he once secured a flight school's airfield in Denmark to facilitate a plane packed with product. To another, he discussed setting up a legitimate vegetable company, including hiring a web designer, to then import produce that he could hide drugs in. He controlled a timber company in Belgium that could be used for shipping goods to Ecuador. Another legitimate import useful for smuggling drugs was animal feed. At one point, an insider at a factory was prepared to help Microsoft hide chemicals for making amphetamine inside cans of energy drink. Now, Microsoft's collaborators in the speedboat operation wanted to do more jobs, including in Australia. They have an endless number of ships, Microsoft told one associate. It was a dizzying amount of business, but Microsoft stayed in his lane. When one person suggested he get into trading gold, Microsoft said he doesn't touch stuff he doesn't know about. He knew all about smuggling drugs, and he knew all about encrypted phones, how to use them to weave a spider web of contacts in the criminal underworld. He knew everybody, one associate said. Microsoft was obviously a big deal. And he understood as much. Microsoft was also, quite simply, crazy, according to multiple people who worked with him. During a trip to Cartagena, Colombia, the previous year, Microsoft had gone on a drug-fueled rampage through the Hyatt Regency. High on cocaine and ecstasy, authorities say, he snapped and threw a chair out of a smashed window on the 11th floor. And a blender, and a table, and a broom. A crowd of people gathered on the street across from the hotel and shielded their eyes from the sun as they pointed upward at what was bizarrely unfolding in the sky above them. Microsoft's outburst was seen as such a danger that the hotel evacuated, as did a nearby supermarket. Colombian authorities, who later alleged that Microsoft had visited Cartagena as a sex tourist, expelled him from the country and banned him from re-entry for 7 years. In an instant, Microsoft could flip from that sort of unhinged behavior to saying that he loved his co-conspirators, to threatening to kill someone, to congratulating a beleaguered, sleep-deprived drug gang on a job well done. A colleague smirked that Microsoft had 7 different personalities, and he seemed to have an encrypted phone for nearly each of them. He carried 2 Sky phones with him. For a time, he'd even been an encrypted phone dealer himself, persuading other criminals to join him on Sky. Microsoft was also a customer of Sky's rival, EncroChat, the most popular encrypted phone for criminals in Sweden. He'd trusted that device enough to plan at least one assassination with it, using it to trade photos and discuss travel related to the hit. But something was about to shake the criminal underground, something that would drive Microsoft to go all in on a third encrypted phone company. He would even attempt to take total control of it, to place himself atop a global empire of networked devices, never realizing that other people, higher up the chain, were in fact taking control of him. In the middle of the night on June 13, 2020, just 18 days after Microsoft's speedboat smuggling operation, EncroChat sent a message to its customers. Emergency for Encro users, it started, with simple black text on a white background. It claimed that government entities had taken over some of the company's infrastructure and used that to launch a hack against EncroChat devices. The 5-alarm warning didn't go into specifics, but it urged customers to immediately power off their phones and dispose of them. Due to the level of sophistication of the attack and the malware code, we can no longer guarantee the security of your device. The message to EncroChat's now panicked users read. A couple of weeks later, a coalition of European police authorities held a press conference and took responsibility for the hack. The French gendarmerie had hacked into EncroChat's infrastructure, pushed malware to the phones themselves, harvested about 100 million EncroChat messages, and then shared them with police in the Netherlands, the UK, Norway, and Sweden. Attempted murder for hire, International drug trafficking, extortion, narcotics laboratories. The small group of officials said they had eyes into all of it. International drug and money laundering corridors have become crystal clear, Dutch authorities said in their press release. Within a week of that announcement, Microsoft was crammed into an aisle seat in row 15 on a commercial flight to Istanbul, Turkey. He was traveling with a fellow drug trafficker named Ivan Butina, who sat just across the aisle from him. During the flight, Butina pulled up his Samsung mobile phone and framed a selfie of the two, their eyes smiling above COVID face masks. Microsoft realized he was in a mess because of the EncroChat hack. He was, after all, one of the 60,000 people who had used the company's phones with their texts, now potentially in the hands of law enforcement. But he also realized that EncroChat's death presented an opportunity. A space had opened up for a new player in the encrypted phone world. Plenty of criminals in Sweden and others further afield were now looking for a replacement device to secure their communications, hence Microsoft's trip to Istanbul. His object was to meet up with someone he would later call the Encryption King. Hakan Ayik was Australia's most wanted man. He had run a cartel that smuggled in many of the country's drugs and was now based in Turkey, running international expansion for a new encrypted phone provider called Anøm. He was looking for someone to help him push Anøm in Europe, and Microsoft's prodigious connections to organized crime gave him an edge. In that visit and subsequent trips, Ayik and Microsoft became close. Together, they figured they had a shot at running a large chunk of an encrypted phone company, one that, if they played their cards right, would unseat Sky. I was at the table when the deal was made, Microsoft later recalled to an associate in an Anøm message. Anøm will be the largest one in the world. Their first goal was to cement Anøm's presence in Stockholm, a hotbed for organized crime in Europe. Microsoft estimated there were thousands of potential users there and in Sweden's northern provinces. Microsoft's travel companion, Butina, was an aging gangster from Malmö who had helped bring him up in the criminal underworld. Microsoft called him Uncle, even though they weren't related. He would be Microsoft's partner in pressing Anøm across Sweden. But as they returned from Turkey and entered an encryption turf war, mainly against Sky, it quickly became clear that Microsoft and Butina were at odds. Butina, who had recently served a long prison sentence and had no intention of going back behind bars, wanted to sell Anøm phones out in the open, in shops, maybe even use an Instagram profile to generate publicity. It would give him a nice way to generate income without resorting to crime. Microsoft shut down that idea. Sales would be completely underground from person to person. "We move Anøm like we move kilos," he said. Microsoft's target market was the country's drug trafficking and murder-for-hire gangs, but winning them over would be a challenge. Sky was so popular, phone resellers joked that every other guy was a vendor of the company's handsets. Some drug traffickers even went so far as to emboss the Sky logo into their blocks of drugs. Anøm would be an unknown newcomer. Microsoft's first tactic was to outprice the competition. While a 6-month Sky subscription could cost between $1,000 and $2,000, he offered promotional deals on Anøm for as little as $600 in some cases. Microsoft even gave away the phones to some prospective clients for free. Worry about the money later and take as many as you want. Just hand out the phones to your people, he told his gangster contacts. Above all, he assured them that the police would never get anywhere near the platform. "You can trust Anøm," he said. The guy behind the company, he claimed, was wanted by the FBI and one of the most criminal people there are. He was seemingly referring to Anøm's creator, a tech-savvy entrepreneur who went by the nickname Afgu. "Anøm was just me and other criminals there," Microsoft wrote in texts. To demonstrate his own faith in the product, Microsoft sent photos of his own Swedish identification card, with his name, date of birth, and photograph across Anøm. Microsoft also spread negative news stories about Sky that claimed the devices were vulnerable to hacking by the police. His staff stressed that Sky was based in Canada, which was part of the Five Eyes intelligence alliance. Microsoft built an initial team of about half a dozen resellers, commanding them to keep their Anøm phones in hand at all times. He told his resellers to denigrate Sky's security and also steadily remove contacts from their own Sky phones. That way, more people would need to come to Anøm. There was a finite market for these criminal-focused devices, and Microsoft needed to squeeze customers from one platform to another. "Only pussies use Sky, say that to them," Microsoft told his resellers. He made things personal. When an associate of his kept using Sky, he told them, "This is my life, you understand. If you use Sky, you are also playing with my freedom." Finally, if none of that was enough to give Anøm an edge, Microsoft entertained a third option: violence. He likened the selling of phones to having a drug territory. If someone else on his or his reseller's turf sold encrypted phones, he suggested sending someone to shoot them. "There is too much shooting with you," Butina said. "Who says whose territory this is? It is mine. Nobody sells but for my people," Microsoft snapped back. "I haven't even started yet." The Anøm rollout was sloppy at best, but customers gradually started to trickle in. And as they did, so did requests for new features on the phones. Microsoft said he would compile these user issues and report them to Anøm headquarters. He often annoyed Anøm's central support staff, rapidly and haphazardly flip-flopping between demands. Take out the ability to contact support from the user's phones, then put it back in. Introduce the ability to make voice calls, and then he'd change his mind again. But the people in charge at Anøm told their staff to bear with Microsoft, because his goals, to make Anøm the organized criminal's handset of choice, were closely aligned with theirs. As an aggressive and successful international drug trafficker who vouched for Anøm by using it for his own drug deals, he was a perfect ambassador for the brand. When it came to tapping into international criminal networks to sell phones, Microsoft was second only to Ayik. As Anøm became more popular in the criminal underground, the people at the very top of the company watched everything unfold from a set of desks in San Diego, California. When sales really started to pick up, they moved into a larger office space and set up more rows of computers and brought in more staff. Given Anøm's international reach, the team sorted its office space into geographical regions, with people focused on different countries in different parts of the room. The best part of Anøm's expansion was that they didn't need to do any work to sell the phones. "We allowed these devices to be sold organically across the world," says Brett Kalina, one of the higher-ups overseeing Anøm. "A high-ranking criminal would buy phones from Anøm and then turn around and sell those phones to other criminals, either at a markup or for a slice of the profits. It became a cycle that feeds itself," as another principal at Anøm said. Or as Kalina put it, more cynically and to the point, "We were creating our own pyramid scheme." Money from the sale of Anøm phones siphoned ever upward. It was a pretty good deal for someone like Microsoft, who sat high in the pyramid with a growing line of resellers below him. But no one in all of Sweden, not even Microsoft, knew who it was at the very top of the scheme. The identity of all those people at their desks in San Diego was a complete secret. That, however, was about to change. The Swedish police authority headquarters in Stockholm looks more like a castle than a police station, and inside it, a huge smile was spreading across Ted Esplund's face. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed head of operations with the police authority's National Intelligence Unit was midway through a coffee with the local FBI legal attaché from the U.S. Embassy. Esplund and the attaché often had these meetings to update each other on their country's respective investigations, but this one was different. First, the attaché asked Esplund to sign a bunch of paperwork to ensure he understood the sensitivity of the conversation. Then he revealed something incredible. It had to do with Anøm, the encrypted phone company that had swept in to fill the vacuum left behind by EncroChat. Anøm, the visiting attaché said, was in fact even more of a honeypot than EncroChat had been. The FBI wasn't just intercepting its messages. The FBI was secretly managing the whole company under the code name Operation Trojan Shield. The people at the top of its pyramid scheme were actually a bunch of agents, furiously reading messages between criminals. That's when Esplund's face erupted into its grin. The FBI, it turned out, had controlled Anøm for nearly the entire existence of the company. It all started back in 2018 when the agency shut down another encrypted phone company called Phantom Secure. Just as happened with EncroChat, the crackdown created a vacuum in the market, with stranded Phantom Secure users now grasping for a new phone of choice. And somewhat like Microsoft, a canny player in the encrypted phone industry smelled an opportunity in the exodus. As it happened, one of Phantom Secure's distributors had been on the verge of starting his own rival encrypted phone company. The FBI and its partners at the Australian Federal Police, who had been involved in the Phantom Secure takedown, leaped at the chance. First, they built a backdoor into Anøm's encryption mechanism. Then the Australians ran a beta test. AFGU handed out a few phones to criminal contacts in Australia, 100% of the beta test customers used the phones to conduct crimes, and the police caught every word of it. The operation took off from there. The unwitting beta testers told their contacts about Anøm, and soon Afgu was fielding demand for the phones overseas. This word-of-mouth marketing was important because the FBI needed to avoid any claims of entrapment. It helped that this organic sales model was just how many real encrypted phone companies worked. As Anøm grew, especially in Europe, the FBI started learning about drug shipments and assassination attempts in other countries, so it began passing tips to foreign law enforcement agencies through legal attachés. But as users flooded in, especially with the 2020 fall of EncroChat, they got overwhelmed. Eventually, it made more sense to simply give some foreign partners direct access to the Anøm messages. Some were given credentials to Anøm's surveillance backend called Hola iBot. That's where Esplund came in. Now he was being roped into the world's biggest sting operation as well. Esplund was astonished. "I just wanted to scream out to all my colleagues," Esplund later said, to shout his admiration for what the Americans had pulled off. It took just a few hours for Esplund's superiors to approve Sweden's involvement. Police in Sweden had already seen the incredible power of messages taken from underground chat platforms. After the EncroChat hack and subsequent arrests, the number of shootings and explosions in Sweden had gone down for the first time in years. Senior officials thought those messages had been a game changer in combating serious and violent crime. Now the FBI was inviting them to a front row seat in the Anøm operation. They did not hesitate. The FBI provided Sweden and several other European countries with detailed instructions on how to proceed. And so the Swedish police authorities set up a room where Esplund's team worked nearly around the clock. They put up dividers inside the room, blocking anyone from peering inside from the adjoining corridor. There was to be no mention of Anøm beyond the room, not even when the officers used the nearby toilets that they shared with the rest of the intelligence unit. It was obvious to other teams that something significant was happening. The room was scarcely ever empty. If anyone asked, the Anøm agents said they were still just piecing through data from the EncroChat hack. In fact, Esplund's team had recreated a miniature version of the FBI's San Diego wiretap rooms, eavesdropping on new messages from an ever-increasing number of criminals. And it wasn't long before they became all too familiar with the prolific chat output of Anøm's biggest booster in Sweden, and his next outlandish scheme was just getting off